Listener discretion is advised. This story contains mature themes, including violence, trauma, organized crime, and adult relationships. Please consider whether this content is right for you before listening.
My name is Isabella Fontana, and I am telling you this story because some truths are too heavy to carry alone. This is the story of Aurora Ricci, the woman who became my heart, my salvation, and my greatest vulnerability. But to understand her, you must first understand the blood that flows between us, not by birth but by the cruel hand of fate. I never knew Aurora as a child, though our lives were already intertwined by violence long before we met. Her father, Alberto Ricci, was a good man. I know this because my mother, Rosalia Fontana, spoke of him with the kind of respect she reserved for few. He was a baker, a singer, a man who believed in honest work and family dinners around a table filled with laughter. But in our world, the world I inherited, the world that chose me before I could choose it, good men sometimes make fatal mistakes. Alberto's mistake was simple. He refused to pay the peso, the protection money that keeps businesses safe, families whole, children fed. He thought his goodness would shield him. He was wrong. Enzo Mancini was my mother's lieutenant then, a man I barely knew but would come to hate with every fiber of my being. When Alberto confronted him, when he dared to say no to the family that controlled every street corner, every breath of air in Bologna, Enzo did what men like him do. He pulled the trigger without hesitation, without mercy. Aurora was 12 years old when she came home from school to find her family drowning in grief. Her father's body wasn't even cold yet, but his absence filled their small apartment like poisonous smoke. That was the day Aurora's innocence died, though I wouldn't learn this truth for years to come. I often wonder if fate was laughing at us even then, knowing that the daughter of the man we killed would one day hold my heart in her hands. The years that followed Alberto's death should have been Aurora's time to grow, to discover who she was beyond her father's daughter. Instead, they became her slow destruction. My mother ruled our family with an iron fist wrapped in maternal care. She believed in order, in tradition, in protecting our people through strength. But she was often away, handling the complexities of running an empire built on fear and loyalty. In her absence, men like Enzo operated in the shadows, believing themselves untouchable. Aurora was 16 when Enzo began his campaign against her soul. I've spent years trying to understand how he justified it to himself. This systematic breaking of a girl already shattered by loss. Perhaps he saw vulnerability and mistook it for weakness. Perhaps he enjoyed the power of holding life and death over an entire family with his whims. He would summon her with threats wrapped in politeness. Her mother's safety. Her younger brother Matteo's future. The family bakery that barely kept them afloat. Aurora learned to disappear inside herself during those visits, to become a ghost in her own body. The bright girl who once sang with her father became hollow, distant, unreachable. I was away at private school during those years, learning languages and literature while Aurora learned to survive. If I had known, if I had been there. But guilt is a luxury I cannot afford. The past is written in blood, and no amount of wishing can change the ink. The truth came out the way truth always does in our world, through betrayal. One of Enzo's men, dying from a rival's bullet, confessed to my mother in his final moments. He spoke of Aurora, of the things Enzo had done, of the silence he had bought with terror. My mother's rage was biblical. Enzo was dead within hours, his body left as a message to anyone who might mistake her mercy for weakness. But Aurora was already lost to us, caught in the web of trauma that no execution could untangle. When my mother found her, Aurora begged for death. Not dramatically, not as manipulation, but with the quiet desperation of someone who had forgotten what it meant to hope. My mother refused. Instead, she offered compensation, protection, care. Everything except the one thing Aurora wanted: to disappear. It was during this time that I first met Aurora, though she would claim later not to remember. I was home from school for the holidays, 17 and full of naive curiosity about my mother's sudden protectiveness toward this broken girl. Aurora sat in our garden like a statue carved from grief, her dark hair falling across her face like a curtain. I approached her with the clumsy kindness of youth, offering conversation, attempting smiles. She looked through me as if I were made of glass. "Who hurt you?" I asked, because at 17 I believed that identifying pain was the same as healing it. She turned those dark eyes on me, eyes that should have held the sparkle of youth but instead held the weight of too much knowledge. "Your people," she said simply, and walked away. I didn't understand then that I was looking at my future, at the woman who would teach me that love could exist in the space between hatred and hope. The final blow came when Aurora was 18. Matteo, her younger brother, was caught in crossfire during a territorial dispute between our family and the Benedettis. He was 14, walking home from school with friends, when the bullets started flying. One found him, as bullets always seem to find the innocent. Aurora held his body in the street, her voice breaking as she sang the lullabies their father had taught her. The song mixed with her screams, creating a sound I have never forgotten. The sound of a soul ripping in half. She blamed us, of course. All of us. The Fontanas, the Mafia, the system that turned children into casualties and called it business. She left Bologna that night, disappearing into the darkness with nothing but a single bag and a hatred that burned brighter than the Italian sun. My mother let her go. "Some birds must fly away before they can choose to return," she told me. I didn't understand what she meant until years later, when I was the one waiting for Aurora to choose. 5 years passed before I saw Aurora again. 5 years during which I learned to carry the weight of leadership, to make decisions that kept people alive and sent others to their graves. My mother died in my arms when I was 21, her final words a warning. "The crown is heavier than you imagine, Isabella. Choose your loves carefully." I became the head of the Fontana family overnight, the youngest dawn in our history. Some whispered that I was too young, too soft, too different from the men who had ruled before me. They were right about being different. I wanted to change things, to find a way to honor our traditions while leaving room for mercy. I wanted to prove that strength didn't require cruelty, that protection didn't demand brutality. But wanting change and achieving it are different beasts entirely. Aurora had fled to Florence, where she enrolled in university and tried to build a life from the ashes of her pain. She studied music, worked in small venues, sang the songs her father had taught her to audiences who could never understand their true weight. She was surviving but not living, existing in the space between memory and hope. I learned all of this from the reports I commissioned, though I told myself they were for security purposes. The truth was simpler and more dangerous. I couldn't stop thinking about the broken girl in our garden, couldn't stop wondering if she had found peace. The reports painted a picture of a woman in exile from her own life. Aurora worked, studied, sang, and slept. She spoke to few people, trusted fewer. She had built walls so high that even she had forgotten what lay on the other side. I told myself I was respecting her choice to leave, that pursuing her would be another violation in a life already scarred by them. But fate, it seems, has little patience for noble intentions. I was in Florence on business, a meeting with suppliers who moved our products through Tuscany, when I saw her. She was leaving the university, books clutched to her chest, her hair longer than I remembered but her posture still carrying that familiar weight. 5 years fell away in an instant. I was 17 again, curious and clumsy, reaching for something I didn't understand. But I was also 22, a leader who had learned that some opportunities don't come twice. I called her name. Aurora. She turned, and for a moment, I saw recognition flicker across her face before it hardened into ice. She looked older, more beautiful, and infinitely more unreachable. "I think you have me confused with someone else," she said, her voice carrying a Florentine accent that hadn't been there before. "It's me, Isabella. Isabella Fontana. We met when we were—" "I don't know who you're talking about." She turned to leave, but I caught up with her easily. "Aurora, please. I know it's you. I know what happened, what my family. Your family. The words came out like venom. I have no idea what you're talking about. Please leave me alone. She walked away quickly, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she glanced back despite herself. She knew exactly who I was, and that knowledge terrified her. I should have respected her boundaries then. I should have walked away and let her live in peace. Instead, I did what Fontanas do. I pursued what I wanted, consequences be damned. I learned Aurora's schedule within a week. Not through force or intimidation, but through the simple act of observation. She was a creature of habit, visiting the same places at the same times, as if routine could protect her from chaos. She studied at the library on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. She worked at a small club called Il Signo every Friday and Saturday night. She bought groceries on Sunday afternoons from a market near her apartment. I told myself I was being subtle, but subtlety has never been a Fontana strength. I appeared at the library, at the market, outside her apartment building. Each time, Aurora's face grew colder, her movements more hurried. "You're following me," she said one Tuesday morning, cornering me between the history and literature sections of the library. "I'm trying to talk to you. I told you I don't know who you think I am, but your father's name was Alberto. He had a voice like an angel and made bread that could make grown men weep. Your brother was Matteo, and he wanted to be a footballer when he grew up. You used to sing with your father while he worked, and your favorite song was Con di Partiro, because it reminded you of your grandmother." Aurora went pale, her books tumbling to the floor. "How dare you? Because I remember everything about the day we met. You were wearing a blue dress with small flowers on it, and you had a bandage on your left knee from falling off your bicycle. You told me that my people had hurt you, and you were right. We did. I did, just by being born who I am." For a moment I thought she might hit me. Her hands clenched into fists, and I saw the girl she had been warring with, the woman she had become. "What do you want?" she whispered. "I want to apologize. I want to make things right. I want to know if you're okay." "I'm fine." "You're not. Neither am I. Maybe we could be fine together." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Together? Do you hear yourself? I'm nobody. You're..." She gestured vaguely. "You're you. This isn't some romantic story where the Mafia princess falls for the broken girl and everything ends happily ever after. Isn't it?" The question hung between us like a challenge. Aurora stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something crack in her armor. Not breaking, but shifting like ice under pressure. "Stay away from me, Isabella. I won't ask again." She gathered her books and left, but I noticed she didn't run this time. Progress, I told myself, even as my heart sank. The confrontation I had been dreading came on a rainy Thursday evening. Aurora was leaving the library when the sky opened, releasing a torrent that turned the streets into rivers. I pulled up beside her in my car, rolling down the window. "Get in. I'll drive you home." "No. Aurora, you'll catch pneumonia walking in this." "I'd rather drown than get in a car with you." She kept walking, water streaming from her hair, her clothes becoming transparent in the downpour. I drove beside her at walking pace, feeling like the villain in a story I was trying to rewrite. "Please, just let me help you." She whirled around so suddenly that I had to slam on the brakes. Her face was a mask of fury and pain, rain mixing with tears I pretended not to see. "Help me. Help me. Where was your help when Enzo was destroying me piece by piece? Where was your help when my brother died in the street? Where was your help when I begged your mother to let me die?" Each word was a blade, cutting deeper than any physical wound I had ever received. I got out of the car, letting the rain soak through my expensive jacket. "I didn't know," I said quietly. "If I had known." "You would have what? Saved me? Fixed me? Made it all better with your wealth and power and family name?" "I would have killed him myself." The words came out with such conviction that Aurora actually stepped back. I meant them, I realized. I would have killed Enzo with my bare hands if I had known what he was doing. It's too late for that, she said, but some of the fire had gone out of her voice. It's too late for justice. It's not too late for other things. Like what? Like friendship. Like forgiveness. Like love. She laughed bitterly. Love? You don't even know me. I know you sing when you think no one is listening. I know you buy flowers for your apartment every Sunday because beauty matters even when everything else is ugly. I know you cry during old movies and pretend it's because the plots are ridiculous. I know you're afraid of thunder because it sounds like gunshots, and I know you're the strongest person I've ever met. Aurora stared at me, water dripping from her eyelashes. You had me investigated. I had you observed. There's a difference. Is there? I moved closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her dark eyes. Yes. Investigation is about finding weaknesses to exploit. Observation is about understanding someone you care about. You don't care about me. You feel guilty about me. There's a difference. He was right, at least partially. Guilt was certainly part of it. But standing there in the rain, seeing the way she held herself like a weapon ready to strike or shatter, I knew it was more than that. Maybe it started with guilt, I admitted. But it's not that anymore. Then what is it? The question demanded honesty, and I gave it to her. It's the way you look when you sing, like you're having a conversation with ghosts. It's the fact that you're brave enough to rebuild your life from nothing, even when everything inside you wants to give up. It's the way you see through all the pretense and politics and power to the truth underneath. It's the way you make me want to be better than what I am. Aurora was crying now, though the rain made it hard to tell. You don't understand what you're asking for. Then explain it to me. I'm broken, Isabella. Not damaged, not hurt, not tragic, broken. There are pieces of me that will never work right again. I have nightmares that leave me screaming. I can't be touched without permission because my body remembers things my mind wants to forget. I hate your world, your family, everything you represent. I hate that I'm attracted to you despite all of that. The last confession slipped out like a secret she hadn't meant to share. I felt my heart stop and restart, hope blooming in my chest like a dangerous flower. You're attracted to me? That's what you focus on. Out of everything I just said. It's the only part that gives me hope. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, a gesture so vulnerable it made me want to pull her into my arms. Hope for what? That maybe we can figure out the rest together. For a long moment we stood there in the rain, two women carrying the weight of our family's sins, both afraid to reach for something that might save us. Aurora broke first. I need time. How much time? I don't know. Maybe forever. I'll wait. You say that now, but... I'll wait, I repeated, and I meant it. She nodded once, then walked away into the rain. I didn't follow her this time, but I stayed on that street long after she disappeared, letting the storm wash over me like a baptism. 3 weeks passed without a word from Aurora. I respected her request for space, even as every instinct I possessed screamed at me to go to her, to fight for what I wanted. But Aurora wasn't a territory to be conquered or a rival to be defeated. She was a woman who had been given too few choices in her life, and I refused to take another one away from her. I threw myself into work instead, reorganizing our operations, implementing new rules about civilian casualties, creating programs to support the families of those lost in our conflicts. I told myself I was becoming the leader my mother had believed I could be. The truth was simpler. I was trying to become someone worthy of Aurora's love. When she finally called, I almost didn't believe it was real. Isabella. Aurora. How are you? Pause. Confused. Angry. Scared. Of me. Of myself. Of what I might want. My heart hammered against my ribs. What do you want? To see you. To talk. Maybe to try. Try what? Whatever this is. Whatever it could be. But I need you to understand something first. Anything. If you hurt me, if you lie to me or use me or decide I'm not worth the complication, I won't survive it. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. I've rebuilt myself once from nothing. I don't have the strength to do it again. The vulnerability in her voice nearly broke me. I won't hurt you. You can't promise that. No one can promise that. He was right, of course. But I could promise something else. I can promise that if I do hurt you, it won't be because you weren't worth fighting for. It won't be because I didn't care enough. And it won't be because I gave up on us. Another long pause. Okay. Okay, let's try. But we go slow, Isabella. Glacier slow. Geological time slow. I laughed, the sound rusty from weeks of tension. I can do slow. And we need rules. What kind of rules? No surprises. No secrets. No using your resources to manipulate situations. And if I say stop, we stop. No questions, no arguments, just stop. Agreed. And Isabella? Yes. If this goes wrong, if we crash and burn and end up hating each other, promise me you won't blame yourself for trying. The request was so unexpected, so generous despite her own pain, that I had to close my eyes against the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. Only if you promise the same thing. Deal. Deal. So, what happens now? Now you ask me on a proper date. Somewhere public, somewhere safe, somewhere I can leave if I need to. Aurora Ricci, would you have dinner with me tomorrow night? Yes, Isabella Fontana. I would. I spent the entire next day in a state of nervous energy that my bodyguards found both amusing and concerning. I changed clothes 3 times, rehearsed conversation topics, and generally behaved like a teenager preparing for her first date rather than a crime boss who commanded respect through most of Italy. The restaurant I chose was small, intimate without being isolated, with excellent food and a reputation for discretion. I arrived early, a habit born from years of security concerns, and waited at a corner table that offered clear sightlines to all entrances. Aurora was 20 minutes late. I had begun to wonder if she had changed her mind when she appeared in the doorway, scanning the room with the wariness of someone who had learned not to trust unexpected situations. She wore a simple black dress that somehow managed to be both elegant and understated, her hair pulled back in a way that emphasized the sharp intelligence in her eyes. When she spotted me, her expression shifted from nervousness to something softer, not quite relief but recognition. "I'm sorry I'm late," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "I changed my mind about coming approximately 17 times. What convinced you to show up?" "Curiosity. And the fact that I haven't had a proper meal in weeks." "Too busy or too nervous to eat?" "Both." She picked up the menu, using it as a shield between us. "This is strange, isn't it? Sitting here like normal people, pretending we don't have all this history between us. We don't have to pretend anything. We can be exactly who we are." She lowered the menu, studying my face. "And who are you, Isabella Fontana? Beyond the family name and the reputation, who are you?" It was a fair question and a dangerous one. Most people in my position learned early to compartmentalize, to show only the face that served their purposes. But Aurora's directness demanded honesty. "I'm someone who inherited a legacy I'm still figuring out how to carry. Someone who wants to believe that power can be used to protect instead of destroy. Someone who lies awake at night wondering if the decisions I make are justified by their outcomes or if I'm just telling myself comfortable stories about necessary evils. And personally, outside of all the existential crisis about leadership." I smiled at her phrasing. "Personally, I'm someone who reads poetry when she can't sleep, who cries at old movies but pretends it's because the acting is bad, who knows more about Renaissance art than anyone in my position has a right to, and who has been wondering for 5 years what it would feel like to hear you laugh." Something shifted in Aurora's expression, not quite trust, but a recognition that I was offering something real. "You want to hear me laugh?" "More than almost anything." That's a lot of pressure to put on my sense of humor. "No pressure. I have time." The dinner that followed was unlike anything I had experienced. We talked about books, about music, about her studies and my attempts to modernize ancient traditions. Aurora was brilliant, funny, and occasionally cutting in her observations about the world we both inhabited from different angles. She told me about her work at the club, how singing gave her a way to process emotions that felt too big for words. I told her about my struggles with the old guard in my organization, men who saw my youth and gender as weaknesses to exploit. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had been born into a different family? She asked over dessert. Every day. Do you ever wonder what yours would have been like if mine hadn't destroyed it? The question hung between us like a blade, sharp and potentially devastating. Aurora set down her spoon and considered it seriously. I used to. For a long time that's all I could think about. The life where my father lived, where Matteo grew up, where I didn't learn to be afraid of shadows and sudden noises. But lately I think maybe we become who we're meant to be through our experiences, not in spite of them. Maybe the person I would have been without the tragedy wouldn't be strong enough for whatever comes next. And what do you think comes next? She looked at me across the table, her eyes holding depths I was only beginning to understand. I have absolutely no idea. But for the first time in years I'm curious to find out. When I drove her home that night, the silence in the car was comfortable rather than tense. Aurora directed me through the narrow streets of her neighborhood, pointing out landmarks and small details that revealed her affection for her adopted city. This is me, she said as we pulled up outside a modest apartment building. Thank you for dinner. Whatever this was. It was a beginning, I said. At least I hope it was. She unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't immediately get out of the car. Isabella. Yes. I had a good time tonight. I wasn't sure I remembered how to do that anymore. Have a good time? Trust someone enough to let them see who I am underneath all the protective layers. The admission hit me like a revelation. And who are you underneath? Someone who wants to believe that good things can happen to people like us. Before I could respond, she leaned across the car and kissed me. It was soft, tentative, a question rather than a statement. I kissed her back carefully, aware that I was holding something precious and fragile. When we broke apart, Aurora's cheeks were flushed. I should go inside. You should. But I don't want to. Then don't. She studied my face in the dim light from the street lamps. What are you asking? I'm asking if you want to invite me up for a drink. Nothing more, nothing you're not ready for. Just more time. I don't have much alcohol. I don't need alcohol. My apartment is small and not very impressive. I don't need impressive. I might change my mind and ask you to leave. Then I'll leave. She nodded once, decisively. Hey, come up. Aurora's apartment was small but warm, filled with books and plants and small artifacts that spoke to her careful cultivation of beauty in everyday things. She made tea while I studied the photographs on her bookshelf, images of her family from before when they were whole and happy. That's my father, she said, joining me with 2 cups. And that's Matteo when he was 7. He lost his 2 front teeth the week before that picture was taken. They look happy. We were. It's strange how you can remember happiness so clearly even when you can barely recall what it felt like. We sat on her small couch, the distance between us carefully maintained but charged with possibility. Aurora curled her legs under herself, cradling her teacup like a source of warmth. Tell me something about yourself that isn't in any report, she said. Something secret? Something real. I considered the request. I wanted to be a teacher when I was little. Elementary school, maybe kindergarten. I liked the idea of helping children discover things, of being the person who made learning feel like an adventure. What changed? My father was murdered when I was 8. After that, there wasn't really a choice about what I would become. Aurora's expression softened. I'm sorry. I knew your mother ruled the family, but I didn't know. It's not something we talked about. My mother believed in moving forward, not dwelling on what was lost. She said grief was a luxury we couldn't afford. Do you believe that? I used to. Now I think maybe grief is just love with nowhere to go, and we all need to find ways to honor what we've lost. Aurora set down her teacup and moved closer to me on the couch. Is that what you're doing with me? Honoring what was lost? No. With you, I'm trying to find what was never lost, just buried. And what's that? Hope. She kissed me then, more decisively than in the car, her hands framing my face like she was trying to memorize the moment. I responded carefully, letting her set the pace, following her lead as she explored this new territory between us. When she pulled back, her breathing was unsteady. I haven't done this in a long time. We don't have to. I want to. I'm just out of practice. And scared. Of me. Of wanting this too much. Of letting you matter. I took her hands in mine, noting the slight tremor in her fingers. You're allowed to want things, Aurora. You're allowed to let people matter. What if it doesn't work? What if we're too different, too damaged, too complicated? Then we'll figure it out as we go. Together. She nodded, then stood and extended her hand to me. Come to bed with me. Not for anything dramatic or earth-shattering, just come to bed. Let me fall asleep next to someone I trust. I followed her to her small bedroom, where she handed me one of her t-shirts to sleep in. We changed separately, maintaining a modesty that felt both old-fashioned and deeply intimate. When we finally lay down together, Aurora curled against my side with a sigh that seemed to release years of tension. Is this okay? She whispered. It's perfect. Even though nothing happened? Especially because nothing happened. This is exactly what was supposed to happen tonight. She was quiet for so long that I thought she had fallen asleep. Then just as I was drifting off myself, she spoke again. Isabella. Thank you for waiting for me to be ready. Thank you for being worth waiting for. I felt her smile against my shoulder, and I knew that whatever came next, this moment was worth every difficult choice that had led us here. But our peace didn't last long. Around 3 a.m, Aurora began to stir restlessly, small sounds of distress escaping her lips. I watched as her calm expression twisted into something anguished, her body tense with remembered terror. No, she whispered, then louder. Please no. I'll be good, I promise. My heart shattered as I realized I was witnessing one of her nightmares, seeing the trauma that still haunted her sleep. I wanted to wake her, to pull her from whatever hell she was reliving, but I remembered what she had said about being touched without permission. Aurora, I said softly, not touching her but making my voice a lifeline. You're safe. You're in your apartment, in your bed. It's Isabella and you're safe. She woke with a gasp that was half scream, her eyes wild and unfocused. For a moment she didn't recognize me, and I saw the terror that lived beneath her careful composure. It's okay, I continued, speaking in the same calm tone. You're safe. It was just a dream. You're in control. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed immediately by shame. I'm sorry. I should have warned you. I should have. You have nothing to apologize for. But I woke you up and I probably scared you and… Aurora. I kept my voice gentle but firm. You survived something terrible. Having nightmares doesn't make you weak or broken or anything to be ashamed of. It makes you human. She was crying now, silent tears that caught the moonlight from her window. I hate that he still has power over me. Even dead, even gone, he still controls my nights. He doesn't control anything. What you experienced changed you, but it didn't defeat you. You're still here, still fighting, still choosing to live and love and trust. That's victory, not surrender. You really believe that? I know that. You want to know how I know? She nodded, wiping her eyes with the sheet. Because the Aurora that Enzo tried to destroy would never have been brave enough to give me a chance. She would have stayed hidden, stayed safe, stayed alone. But you didn't. You risked everything tonight by letting me in, by letting yourself want something good. That's not the action of a broken woman. That's the action of a warrior who refuses to let the past dictate the future. Aurora stared at me for a long moment, then moved closer, pressing her face against my shoulder. Can you hold me? Just until I fall back asleep. I can hold you for as long as you need. I wrapped my arms around her carefully, creating a cocoon of safety and warmth. Her breathing gradually slowed, her body relaxing against mine as the adrenaline of the nightmare faded. Isabella. I'm here. I think I'm falling in love with you. The words were whispered so quietly I almost missed them. When they registered, my heart performed acrobatics that would have impressed Olympic gymnasts. I think I'm falling in love with you too. That's terrifying. The best things usually are. She fell asleep again in my arms, and this time her dreams were peaceful. I lay awake watching her, marveling at the trust she had shown me, the vulnerability she had allowed me to witness. I understood then that love wasn't just about wanting someone or even caring about them. It was about being trusted with their deepest wounds and choosing to guard them rather than exploit them. I also understood that Aurora was right to be terrified. Love in our world was a luxury that came with a price, and I was already calculating what I would be willing to pay to keep her safe. The weeks that followed our first night together were a careful dance of advancing and retreating, of building trust one conversation at a time. Aurora allowed me deeper into her life gradually, like a careful gardener tending a plant that might bloom or might die depending on the attention it received. We established routines that felt both domestic and revolutionary. I would pick her up after her late shifts at the club, driving her home through empty streets while she told me about the songs she had performed and the stories behind them. She would cook dinner for us on Sunday afternoons, teaching me family recipes her father had passed down, her hands guiding mine as I learned to fold pasta or season sauce properly. But even as we grew closer, the weight of our respective worlds pressed against us like storm clouds on the horizon. Aurora struggled with what she called the contradiction of loving you. She hated the Mafia, hated everything it represented, hated the violence and fear that sustained it. Yet she was falling in love with someone who embodied all of those things, regardless of my intentions to change them. How do I reconcile this? She asked me one evening as we walked along the Arno River. How do I love someone whose very existence is built on the system that destroyed my family? It was a question I had been asking myself since our first kiss. Maybe you don't reconcile it. Maybe you just choose moment by moment which truth matters more. And what if I choose wrong? Then we figure out how to live with the consequences together. She stopped walking and turned to face me. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's just necessary. Necessary for what? For us to have any chance at happiness. She studied my face in the dying light, searching for something I hoped she would find. You really believe we can be happy? Despite everything. I have to believe it. Without that belief, nothing else makes sense. My own struggles were different but no less complex. Running the Fontana family required a delicate balance of strength and diplomacy, of maintaining respect while implementing change. The old guard watched me constantly for signs of weakness, for evidence that my youth and my relationship with Aurora were making me soft. They weren't entirely wrong. Aurora was changing me, making me question decisions I would have made without hesitation before. When conflicts arose with rival families, I found myself looking for solutions that minimized civilian casualties, that protected the innocent even when it meant accepting less favorable terms. You're going to get us all killed with this bleeding heart approach, my underboss, Franco Alberti, warned me after I refused to authorize a hit that might have endangered a school nearby. The Benedettis already think you're weak. Show them mercy and they'll see it as an invitation to attack. Let them attack, I replied. We'll respond with overwhelming force. But we won't become the kind of family that considers children acceptable casualties. Your mother would have authorized the hit. My mother ruled in a different time. The world has changed, Franco. We change with it or we become extinct. But privately I wondered if he was right. Was my love for Aurora making me weak? Was my desire to become someone worthy of her affection compromising my ability to protect the people who depended on me? The answer came sooner than I expected, in the form of a coordinated attack by the Benedetti and Torino families. They had apparently decided that my softness made me vulnerable, that now was the time to challenge Fontana dominance in Bologna. The first strike came at dawn on a Tuesday morning. 3 of our safe houses were hit simultaneously, catching us completely off guard. We lost 6 men in the initial assault, good soldiers who died because I had been focused on romance instead of strategy. I was in Florence with Aurora when the call came through. We had spent the night at her apartment, and I was making breakfast while she graded papers for a music theory class she was teaching. The domestic normalcy of the moment made the news even more jarring. Isabella. Franco's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. We have a situation. How bad? Bad enough that you need to be here. Now. I looked at Aurora, who was watching me with growing concern. She knew my business face from my personal one, could read the shift in my posture that meant violence was coming. I have to go, I told her after hanging up. What happened? Business. Family business. The dangerous kind? I could have lied, could have minimized the threat to keep her from worrying. Instead, I gave her the honesty she deserved. Yes. The very dangerous kind. She nodded, setting down her coffee cup with hands that only trembled slightly. How long will you be gone? I don't know. Will you? She paused, seeming to struggle with the words. Will you come back? The question broke my heart. I moved to where she sat and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in mine. I will come back to you. I promise. You can't promise that. No one can promise that. I can promise that I will fight to come back to you. I can promise that nothing in this world matters more to me than keeping that promise. She kissed me then, desperately, as if she could somehow transfer her strength to me through the contact. Be careful. I will. Be smart. I will. Be ruthless if you have to be. That last instruction surprised me. Aurora, who hated violence, who flinched at raised voices, was telling me to be ruthless. Aurora. I know what I said. I know how I feel about your world. But that world is part of you and you're part of me now. If being ruthless keeps you alive, if it brings you back to me, then be ruthless. I drove back to Bologna with her words echoing in my mind, feeling the weight of what she had given me. Permission to be who I needed to be in order to survive. The war that followed lasted 3 weeks and tested every principle I had tried to maintain as a leader. The Benedettis and Torinos had underestimated our strength, but they had correctly identified a weakness. My reluctance to embrace the most brutal aspects of our business. That reluctance died on the 4th day of fighting, when they made the mistake of targeting Aurora. I don't know how they learned about her, whether through surveillance or betrayal within our ranks. What I know is that they sent 2 men to her apartment in Florence with orders to kill her slowly, to send me a message written in the blood of the woman I loved. Aurora survived because of her own quick thinking and the self-defense training she had given herself after Enzo's death. When the men broke into her apartment, she was ready for them. She had a knife from her kitchen and the desperate strength of someone who had already lost everything once and refused to lose it again. She killed the first man with a single thrust to the heart, moving faster than fear could paralyze her. The second man was larger, stronger, but Aurora had something he didn't. Nothing left to lose. She fought like a woman possessed, using every dirty trick, every advantage she could find. When my men arrived, I had posted guards on her building the moment the war began. They found Aurora standing over 2 corpses, covered in blood, shaking like a leaf but alive. I protected myself, she told me when I reached her an hour later. I protected us. She was in shock, speaking in short sentences that didn't quite connect. I gathered her in my arms, feeling her whole body trembling against mine. You did perfect, I whispered. You did exactly what you had to do. I killed them. They came to kill you. You survived. That's all that matters. Is it? Is that really all that matters? I understood what she was asking. She wanted to know if taking a life, even in self-defense, changed who she was. If violence was contagious, if she would become like the people who had hurt her. You're still you, I told her. You're still good, still pure, still everything I fell in love with. What you did tonight doesn't change that. It proves it. How? Because you fought to live. Because you refused to let them win. Because you knew that your life matters, that what we have together matters enough to fight for. The attack on Aurora transformed me completely. Whatever mercy I had been inclined to show, whatever restraint I had maintained, evaporated in the face of their attempt to murder the woman I loved. I became the leader my family needed. Cold, calculating, absolutely ruthless. We struck back with surgical precision and overwhelming force. The Benedetti leadership was eliminated within 48 hours. The Torinos lasted slightly longer, but only because they tried to run. By the end of the third week, both families had either fled Bologna or sworn allegiance to us. The message was clear. Attacking Isabella Fontana's interests was suicide. Threatening the people she loved was genocide. But victory came at a cost. Aurora watched me orchestrate the destruction of our enemies, saw me make decisions that sent men to their deaths without hesitation. She said nothing, asked no questions, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. Do you hate what I've become? I asked her one night as we lay in bed, the war finally over. I hate what they forced you to become, she replied. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. You didn't choose violence because you enjoyed it. You chose it because it was the only way to protect what matters to you. That's not evil, Isabella. That's love expressed through action. Even when those actions are terrible? She turned in my arms to face me. Especially when those actions are terrible. Anyone can love someone when it's easy, when it doesn't cost anything. But you were willing to become a monster to keep me safe. That's not romantic, it's not pretty, but it's the most profound expression of love I've ever experienced. And you can live with that. With loving someone capable of monstrous things. I can live with loving someone who becomes monstrous when the people she loves are threatened. What I couldn't live with is loving someone who would let me die to preserve their own moral purity. Her words stayed with me long after she fell asleep. Aurora understood something about love that most people never learn. That sometimes caring for someone means being willing to carry the weight of necessary sins, to become what you must become to protect what matters most. But understanding didn't make it easier. In the weeks that followed, I struggled with nightmares of my own, not of the violence I had witnessed, but of the ease with which I had ordered it. I had become my mother, my grandmother, all the Fontana women who had ruled through fear and called it protection. You're spiraling, Aurora observed one evening, finding me staring out the window of my study instead of reviewing reports. I'm reflecting. On what? On whether I'm still someone worth loving. She moved behind my chair and began massaging my shoulders, her touch gentle but firm. Do you remember what you told me after my nightmare? About how surviving trauma doesn't make you broken. Yes. The same applies to surviving war. What you did doesn't define who you are. How you carry it forward does. And how should I carry it forward? By remembering why you did it. By making sure that the power you claimed through violence is used to protect people, not to terrorize them. By being the leader your family needs you to be, not the leader your enemies forced you to become. You think it's that simple? I think it's that hard. Simple and hard aren't the same thing. He was right, of course. The challenge wasn't understanding what needed to be done. It was finding the strength to do it consistently, day after day, choice after choice. Spring came to Bologna like a tentative promise, bringing warmth to stone buildings that had weathered centuries of conflict. Aurora and I had been together for almost a year of careful trust building, of learning to love someone whose world was fundamentally different from your own. I thought we had reached a kind of equilibrium, a way of being together that honored both her need for peace and my responsibilities as a leader. I was wrong. The threat came from an unexpected direction. from within my own organization. A faction of older members, led by my uncle Salvatore Fontana, had been growing increasingly dissatisfied with my leadership. They viewed my relationship with Aurora as a liability, my reforms as weakness, my refusal to expand certain illegal activities as a betrayal of family tradition. "She's making you soft," Salvatore warned me during what I thought was a routine family meeting. "This girl, this outsider, she's changing you in ways that will get us all killed." My personal life is not up for discussion. When your personal life affects the security and profitability of this family, it becomes everyone's business. Then let me be clear, Aurora stays. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to leave. And if we choose to stay and solve the problem ourselves? The threat was barely veiled, but it was there. I felt the familiar cold rage building in my chest, the same fury that had consumed me during the Benedetti War. "If you or anyone else makes a move against Aurora, I will destroy you. Not just kill you, destroy everything you are, everything you've built, everyone you've ever cared about. Are we understood?" Salvatore smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Perfectly. I should have acted then, should have eliminated the threat before it could fully form. But these were family members, men I had grown up respecting. I wanted to believe that loyalty would triumph over ambition. But I was wrong. The plot unfolded over several weeks, carefully coordinated to look like the work of outside enemies. Salvatore was smarter than the Benedettis had been, more patient, more subtle. Instead of direct assault, he chose psychological warfare. Aurora began receiving anonymous letters at her apartment, photographs of her daily routine, threats disguised as love poems. Someone was following her, learning her patterns, making her feel hunted in the city she had chosen as her sanctuary. "We should increase your security," I told her after the 5th letter arrived. "More guards. Isabella, I already can't go to the grocery store without feeling like I'm leading a parade. It's temporary. Just until we identify and eliminate the threat." "And what if it's not temporary? What if this is just what my life looks like now? Always watching over my shoulder, always afraid, always wondering if today is the day someone decides I'm too much of a liability to let live." Her words hit me like accusations, which perhaps they were. By loving me, Aurora had painted a target on her back that would never fully disappear. She would always be vulnerable because she was my weakness, always in danger because she mattered to me. "Maybe." I started, then stopped, unable to voice the thought. "Maybe what?" "Maybe you'd be safer if we ended this. If you disappeared again, started over somewhere new." Aurora stared at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Is that what you want? For me to disappear?" "I want you to be safe." "That's not what I asked." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices. "I want you to be safe and I want you with me. Since I can't have both, I have to choose your safety. Don't I get a choice in this decision?" "Of course you do." "Then I choose you. I choose us. I choose staying and fighting and refusing to let fear win." "Aurora." "No." Her voice was fierce, stronger than I had ever heard it. "I've been running from violence my entire adult life. I ran from Bologna, I ran from the Mafia, I ran from anything that reminded me of what I lost. But I'm not running anymore. If someone wants to hurt me because I love you, then they'll have to come through me to do it." "You don't understand what you're saying." "I understand perfectly. I'm saying that I've already lost everything once and it didn't kill me. I'm saying that I'd rather die fighting for something I believe in than live safely without it. I'm saying that you're worth the risk." Before I could respond, my phone rang. Franco's voice was tight with urgency. "Isabel, we have a problem. Aurora's building is surrounded. Salvatore's people, maybe a dozen of them. It looks like they're preparing to move." My blood turned to ice. "How long ago?" "Just now. We're en route, but..." "I'm closer. Do not engage until I arrive." "That's an order." I hung up and turned to Aurora, who was watching me with understanding dawning in her eyes. "They're here, aren't they?" "Yes." Your uncle? Yes. She nodded once, then moved to her bedroom. When she returned, she was carrying the gun I had given her months ago, the one she had claimed she would never use. What are you doing? What you taught me to do. What I should have done years ago. I'm choosing to fight. We made it to her building just as Salvatore's men were entering through the lobby. I had called for backup, but they were still minutes away. Aurora and I were on our own, facing a dozen armed men who had orders to kill her and probably me as well. The fire escape, I told her, leading her around to the back of the building. We can. No. Aurora's voice was calm, determined. I'm tired of running, Isabella. I'm tired of being afraid, tired of letting other people decide whether I live or die. If this is where it ends, then this is where we make our stand. This isn't a movie, Aurora. This is real. They will kill us both. Then we die together. But we don't run anymore. I looked at this woman I loved, seeing steel where once there had been only vulnerability. The broken girl from my mother's garden had become a warrior, and I had been too focused on protecting her to notice the transformation. All right, I said. We fight. But we fight smart. The battle that followed was brief but decisive. Aurora moved through her own building like she belonged there, using her knowledge of the layout to our advantage. She was calm under fire, precise with her weapon, focused on survival rather than heroics. When it was over, Salvatore lay dead in her living room, 3 of his men beside him. The rest had fled when my reinforcements arrived. Aurora stood over my uncle's body, her gun still smoking, her face splattered with blood that wasn't her own. I killed him, she said, her voice wondering rather than horrified. Yes, you did. He was your family. He stopped being my family the moment he threatened you. She looked at me then and I saw something new in her eyes. Not innocence lost, that had happened years ago. This was different. This was innocence transformed into something harder, more purposeful. What happens now? Now we clean up this mess. Now we send a message to anyone else who might think you're a weakness they can exploit. Now we show them that you're not my vulnerability, you're my strength. Am I? You saved both our lives tonight. You stood your ground when you could have run. You chose love over safety, commitment over comfort. If that's not strength, I don't know what is. Aurora nodded, then moved into my arms. She was shaking now, the adrenaline wearing off, but she didn't cry. She held me tightly and I held her back, both of us alive, both of us changed by what we had survived together. I love you, she whispered against my shoulder. I love you too. Even now. Even after seeing what I'm capable of. Especially now. Especially after seeing who you really are when everything else is stripped away. And who am I? You're the woman who chose to stand and fight rather than run and hide. You're the woman who looked death in the face and refused to blink. You're the woman who killed to protect what we have together. You're mine, Aurora, and I'm yours, and nothing else matters. She pulled back to look at me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You know there's no going back from this, right? After tonight, I'm part of your world completely. No more pretending I'm separate from it. Is that what you want? It's what I am. It's what I chose the moment I decided to stay and fight instead of run and hide. I'm not the victim anymore, Isabella. I'm your partner. Your equal. Your queen. The words sent shivers through me, not of fear but of recognition. He was right. The woman standing before me, bloodied but unbowed, was no longer the broken girl who had begged for death. She was something new, something forged by trauma and tempered by love. Pie Queen, I repeated, tasting the words. Your songbird, she corrected, smiling for the first time since the violence began. The one who learned to sing of love instead of just loss. Epilogue, the Queen's songbird. 2 years have passed since that night in Aurora's apartment. 2 years since she killed my uncle and claimed her place at my side. We've built something together that I never thought possible. A partnership based on equality rather than protection, on mutual strength rather than one-sided sacrifice. Aurora still sings, but her songs have changed. Where once they carried only grief and loss, Now they speak of resilience, of love that survives the worst circumstances, of finding light in the deepest darkness. She performs at private gatherings for our family, her voice weaving stories that remind us all why we fight, what we protect, who we serve. She's become more than my lover, more than my partner. She's become my conscience, my strategist, my most trusted advisor. The families who once whispered about my weakness now speak in hushed tones of the Fontana queen who killed to protect what she loves. But it's not the fear in their voices that matters to me. It's the respect. We've changed our organization too, Aurora and I together. We've eliminated the most brutal practices, created support systems for families affected by our conflicts, built partnerships instead of just demanding submission. We're still a crime family, we're still dangerous, still involved in activities that exist outside the law, but we've found ways to honor our traditions while refusing to perpetuate their cruelest aspects. Do you ever regret it? I asked her this morning as we watched the sunrise from the terrace of our home. Staying, fighting, choosing this life? She considered the question seriously as she considers all things. I regret the circumstances that brought us together. I regret the pain that shaped us both. I regret that love in our world requires such a high price. But do you regret us? She turned to look at me, her eyes holding all the depth and complexity that first drew me to her. Never. Not for a single moment. We were born from blood and sorrow, Isabella, but in each other we found a reason to live. The words echoed something she had said years ago, but with a different meaning now. Then they had been about survival. Now they were about something much more precious. The choice to thrive despite everything that had tried to destroy us. Tonight, Aurora will sing again at a gathering of allied families. She'll stand before men and women who have built their lives on violence and fear, and she'll remind them that there are things worth dying for, things worth killing for, things worth living for. She'll sing of love and loss, of choice and consequence, of the price of loyalty and the cost of betrayal. And I'll watch her from the shadows as I always do, marveling at the strength of the woman who chose me despite everything I represent. The woman who became a killer to stay alive, who became a queen to stay relevant, who became a song to stay sane. My Aurora. My equal. My heart. The Mafia queen's songbird, singing not of captivity but of a love so fierce it transformed prison bars into palace walls. This is our story. This is our song. Born from blood and sorrow, sustained by choices made in darkness, illuminated by a love that refused to be extinguished. Some might call it a tragedy, two women bound together by violence, unable to escape the cycles that created them. But they would be wrong. This is not a tragedy. This is a triumph. This is the sound of love surviving everything the world could throw at it. This is the song of the queen and her songbird, finding harmony in the midst of chaos. And the music plays on.